call to order the Bloomfield Hills Board of Education meeting for July 27th. Attendance, Trustee VanGemert.
All board members are present.
We can stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item number 2A, administrative appointments. Is there a motion?
Move the Board of Education to appoint Andrew Gignac as the principal of Eastover Elementary School with an effective date of July 31st, 2023.
Second.
Motion has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Superintendent Watson.
Thank you, Dr. Southward. So, good evening. As we all know, the hiring of a principal is one of great responsibility. The principal is the leader of the building and the curator of a culture and the guide to student achievement. As part of the process, we conducted a wide search for candidates, gathered data from the Eastover staff and community to gain a better understanding of what was needed for our next leader at Eastover Elementary School. We had a large and very diverse pool of candidates. In addition to an extensive interview process, we had a thorough and appropriate vetting process that was conducted from the school district as well. We have now, as you know, concluded this process and are pleased to announce that Mr. Andrew Gignac is going to be our next principal of Eastover. Mr. Gignac was the principal at West Hills Middle School for the past 2 years, after serving for 11 years as the school's associate principal. Mr. Gignac has worked for 24 years in Bloomfield Hills schools. First hired at Lone Pine Elementary School, teaching 3rd and 5th grades over the course of 6 years. Then Mr. Gignac moved on to West Hills Middle School and became a 6th grade social studies teacher before transitioning to the role of associate principal and then principal. Please join me in congratulating Mr. Andrew Gignac and welcoming him to his new role as principal of Eastover Elementary School.
Is there any additional discussion before Mr. Gignac provides comments? All right, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 7-0. Mr. Gignac, congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It is truly an honor to continue my career. As Pat mentioned, it's been half my life has been in Bloomfield Hills, so I've kind of grown up here in Bloomfield Hills, and I'm so thrilled to be moving from one incredible community from the west side of the district to everything I hear about Eastover and the tight-knit community that it is. I feel honored, privileged to be joining that community in a really neat time, too. I've been able to spend already the past couple weeks, I've been in the building about 4 times, monitoring construction, getting the lay of the land, coming from one middle school building, moving to the middle school building that will be an elementary. I'm really bringing that lens of looking at the facilities while thinking about our younger learners. So thrilled, honored, so appreciative, and I just thank you all for doing what you do and being there for our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations again. Would you like to take a photo? We can gather for a picture.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right next to Andy. One more. Congratulations.
Pearl. I remembered after 3 seconds. So welcome back. We're moving on to item number 3, public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. It is not a time for dialogue. In the interest of time, the Open Meeting Act provides the board members may place time limits on the allotment for an individual comment. In addition to making a public comment, you may also email the Board of Education at any time. Any comment that contains profanity, threats, defamatory remarks, or is directed at a person not employed by the district or a member of the Board of Education in their official capacity and related to the role and responsibilities for which they are employed or served is otherwise exempt from the First Amendment rights and will be excluded from public comment. If you are speaking on behalf of a group or organization, please identify who you represent. Thank you for your time in addressing the Board of Education. You'll have 3 minutes by which you may address the Board of Education. And Megan, will you take time? Thank you. Scott?
Good evening, members and trustees of the Board of Education, Dr. Watson. My name is Scott Worrell. I am the executive director of the Associated Union groups in this district, of which there are 6. I've come to speak to you about a couple of things. First, I want to thank the Board of Education for its approval of the upcoming contracts, tentative agreements with the group at Wing Lake, the instructional assistants. They are a group of hardworking people who dedicate themselves to the students there and work 3 to 5 per classroom with the teacher. And we all know because of them that our students are successful. And this agreement recognizes and values them. And Willie Jew, the president, and I appreciate that and appreciate Mr. McDonald's support in the negotiation process. We also will hear the tentative agreement with the Bloomfield Hills secretaries, the Bloomfield office personnel. That's a 4-year agreement, much similar to the teachers. They are the women, in general, all of them are women, run this district and our buildings of the 13 different buildings or programs in this district, and appreciate the support of the board, and again, Keith's and McDonald's due diligence and work in cooperation with that contract. So thank you on behalf of Kim Vilkovic, who's the president, and myself for that negotiation. Finally, I'd like to bid farewell to someone I've gotten to know for the last 3 years. I knew Dr. Watson as a principal in Bloomfield Hills, teacher in that district, West Bloomfield, teacher there for 16 years, building administrator, I think, for 10 years, where he showed his understanding of how things work inside the classroom, which is vital for credibility with teachers. As a building leader, he led in many different ways. And in Bloomfield Hills, he's demonstrated someone who is honest, works with integrity, and is someone that has passion for the students of this district. And whether it was keeping his door open to anyone who would come in, whether it was a student, a union representative, a teacher, that would talk to him, Pat was always willing to listen and discuss things. Pat made tough decisions, right? He guided the district through COVID. He was always prepared with his charts and his graphs and his information around the world in a difficult time to lead anywhere. I felt that Pat, we could trust in his decisions when he was making them on behalf of students and staff. And I think that as an open and empathetic, I've always saw Pat as someone who's fair. Even if I disagreed with his decisions, he was open to talk about it and made rational, honest decisions that he would share and be transparent with the staff. So on behalf of the unions that I represent, thank you, Dr. Watson. On behalf of myself, I appreciate getting to know you, and hopefully our paths cross again. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, board members. Superintendent Watson. My name is Pauline Hakobian. I am a member of many different boards within this district and also an employee. However, tonight I stand before you as a parent. And I first want to congratulate Principal Gignac because ultimately my kids have had the honor and the privilege of having him in their lives, but he's moving on to Eastover. That's okay. But we've had a lot of great memories, and thank you for your many years at West Hills. Next, I just wanted to say a very bittersweet farewell to Superintendent Watson. Just wanted to come up here and say thank you for all your very many years of service with us, and it's been quite the road. You've had a lot thrown at you, but you've done your very best for our students and I believe our staff and administration. So, thank you. Yeah, and I did email the board earlier, but about the superintendent search, but I'll just leave it there. So, thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. That's all.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Southward. So I want to take everyone just on a little trip down memory lane. It was December 2019. It was about 45 degrees outside, and there were quite a few of us. Trustee Colin was there. My new best friend, Andy Gignac, and Dave Shulkin were there. And we were talking about going for a bond in Bloomfield Hills schools. And there were so many dreams that were going on during that time. And I was just coming into the school district, and it was exciting to see big dreams of what the possibilities were, whether it was going to be one middle school or two, and what would the reconfiguration look like, and what are our needs, and how can we best leverage the assets we already have. And that was December of 2019. So the reality of those dreams are starting to come true this fall. And it's really, truly an exciting time. So when you think about where are we going to be in the fall, right? We're looking at a lot of shifts. We're looking at a shift back to K through 5, 6 through 8. We're looking at deeper learning for our students. How does the environment play a role in their instruction and their well-being? How do we meet the needs of all of our students? All of our students within those instructional spaces, within the classrooms, with a focus on active learning. So often when I'm in meetings talking to people that own a business or run a business and what they're looking for students who can think critically. They're looking for students who can operationalize ideas. The idea that you're going to come in and someone's going to say to you, hey, Trustee Fala, here's my concern. I need 3 solutions by next week for this concern. What can you do? And the response can't be, well, what do you want it to be? Where do you want me to start? Oh, what do I do next? You've got to be able to move and hit the ground running. So when we start to see some of this instructional change, that's what we want to be able to do. Have our students think and be able to move forward. And part of that is going to be failing. Every great success has had failures along the way. We have to shift some of the focus from just the end product of getting it right to what that process is going to look like. And so our spaces are going to help do that. So our learning environments have been designed to include flexible furniture to create better engagement. We want students to be able to move, come together, have an elbow partner, have a group of 8, have a group of 10, have a group of 4, rotate different groups. And we need our furniture to do that. No different than the environments that some of you work in right now. A lot of the cubicles have gone away. There's a lot of common spaces. I had the opportunity to tour a couple of years ago Menlo in Ann Arbor, where you actually work with 1 computer and 2 people. I watched an individual work with a company who every day lives in Russia and dials in and is part of the conversation and the work. So we want to make sure our students are prepared for those types of environments. We also have, within some of our new construction, movable walls for co-teaching. I co-taught for 16 years. what you can do if if Andy and I were co-teaching, how we can divide up the classes, how we can divide up the content, how we can level things based on what our students need and meet their needs differently is going to be incredible. And when you look at this design, you say, oh, it looks very traditional. Well, the tables that are pieced together can form other configurations. So again, one-on-one in a desk, 2 together, 3 together, 8 together. All the furniture is movable so that the teacher can operate what they feel is going to be the best based on the lesson or lessons they have for that day. And when you open the wall, you might have 40 kids together in one class. You might decide to have 30 on one side, 10 in another. You might open the wall and have 6 different stations for that day that the students are working for. All that's available with our new construction that wasn't available to do. So not only is it exciting for our students, for our wonderful teachers as well, it gives them opportunity to do things they otherwise couldn't do. Another solution that's part of the construction is storage, to make sure we have access to a variety of tools and resources. We were short on storage. So for a lot of our staff, for some of the creative things they wanted to do, there was really no place to put the materials they needed. Having that opportunity is going to be an additional bonus as we move forward in the fall as well. Spaces for collaboration. Some of you have children that have already gone on to college. You've noticed at the collegiate level, you're seeing more of these spaces for collaboration. Those of you in business, depending on your office environment, or if you visited Google or Quicken downtown Detroit or some of the others, they've gone to this more flexible seating with the idea to collaborate. Wherever our students go, they're going to have to be able to collaborate with people from all over the world in all kinds of different environments. And a lot of those skills, we want to make sure we're teaching during the school day in school, so that regardless of what they do or where they go, their opportunity for success and advancement in their career is higher than maybe some of the other students that they're in competition against. Because the world's changed in my time in education. At one point, as a young person in the 70s and 80s, you competed against the people that were in your area. We really compete globally, and we say that all the time. And I really honestly didn't fully get it until that trip to Menlo, when I watched the gentleman from Russia kind of join like a Google Meet, it was Skype at the time, and actually participate on a workday environment every day. That's the reality. The amount of data our students are exposed to by the time they're 10 compared to what we had at 10. I was excited to get an encyclopedia set one day. Most students probably don't even know what that is. So we'll have these additional spaces for collaboration. Soft seating for both quiet study and collaborative learning. There's no magic formula with education that says 180 days, 7 hours a day, facing the front of the room, and a miracle's going to happen. Students learn differently in different spaces. We all feel differently in different spaces as well in the careers that you have. Certain spaces are more conducive to getting things done. So having those opportunities, and also allows for student choice and voice in what they want to do and where they're going to learn best. And again, we want the end result to be all of our students achieve at a high level. So in the fall of 2022, we brought new technology and furniture pilots in all of our K-8 schools. The pilot classrooms range from kindergarten to 6th grade, a variety of floor plans from different vendors. We knew input was going to be important, so we gathered input from our teacher and students to make final decisions. I've said it before, and I'll remind everyone again. Moving to this type of furniture is a major shift. It impacts instruction. There will be pinch points at the beginning of the year where people are frustrated with the furniture. There is a new learning curve with the furniture. That's to be expected. While we piloted different furniture, there are people that like some over others, but there was one package we went with overall. So not everyone's going to get the package that they thought was going to be the best. So keep those things in mind. My past experience of working on multiple bonds over 3 decades is that typically everything settles in by November or right before winter break, and that learning curve and adjustment is over. It's the same for the students, right? If you were a 3rd grader at Conant last year, you're now going to walk into a building that looks remarkably different. You're no longer going to eat lunch in your classroom. You're going to go down to a room with the STEAM room where you're going to be engaged in experiential learning. It's going to look and feel different, which is what we want. We want it to look different. We want it to feel different. I always give the analogy that You know, you could travel back in time in your Marty McFly time machine, and you could go back to 1900 and you could grab a doctor and you could put him in Beaumont in the ER. They probably couldn't even turn on the lights, right? We could have a debate about that. But I could take that teacher potentially from 1900, bring them forward. I was a social studies teacher, so I'll say social studies, put them in a classroom with a chalkboard, chalk, podium, and a book, and they might still feel comfortable. This change will change the way things look, feel for our staff, which is a benefit, and for our students. So grade level layouts for each middle school. We have 6th, 7th, and 8th grade wings. So that's how they're divided for core areas. Strong commitment toward bringing the school community together, providing integration and support services, as well as quick access to common and collaborative spaces. The idea of that as a teacher, you're kind of more of a guide. You kind of set what's going to happen that day with your lesson plan. Then the ability for the students, some might want to work on the floor here, some might want to go out in the breakout space. Our students do well with expectations. Our students continue to impress me on a daily basis. Some of the things they say, some of the things they think of. It does make me, as someone where I'm at my age, really feel like the world is going to be a better place. And it will be led by a lot of the students you will have the opportunity as board members to come into contact with. And really think about that. We have some of the most unique, diverse, incredible young people that we all get to serve every single day, which is honestly a privilege. The Media Center will be an important community learning hub for each school and is positioned near the center of the building. So things were done with intentionality, looking short-term, mid-term, and long-term. More technology-infused, learning dedicated STEAM spaces for our students, and a renewed emphasis on performance spaces. So as part of the bond, we really looked at the 4 A's. How do we improve in the 4 A's? How do we improve in academics? How do we improve in athletics? How do we improve in our arts program? And how do we make better activities or activities available for our students? We really looked at how could the bond impact those 4 areas? Because within those 4 areas, almost every student we serve is going to have a passion either in academics or arts or activities or athletics. And for a lot of our students, and you've met so many, they have a passion in 2, 3, or 4 of those areas. We also want to use elective spaces to encourage students' passions and help them learn about themselves and develop confidence in academic and some of the skill-based areas. So looking at South Hills Middle School, in the red's going to be the 6th grade wing, and the blue's the 7th grade wing. 8th grade is the green, and then the support classes are kind of in the middle. Traditionally in schools, what you've seen with construction is the support classes are in the back corner where no one knows, well, who goes back there? Oh, we don't go back there. I don't know what's back there. We wanted to make sure that everyone felt included. And you can see where the elective classes are going to be, performing, visual arts, and athletics. Keep in mind in both middle schools, we have a dedicated choir room, we have a dedicated band room, and we have a dedicated orchestra room, which are all state-of-the-art, which will rival many of the high schools in Oakland County and throughout the state of Michigan. That will allow us to grow those programs, which are a big part of this community. North Hills configuration a little bit different. Same color grid, support classes are in orange. Red is going to be your 6th grade wing. 7th grade wing is in blue. 8th grade wing is in green. The other thing, and you might remember we talked about whether or not we were going to be able to add a 2nd level if we ever needed it at North Hills. And about a year and a half, the decision was made, we keep it 1 level, but the opportunity, if we ever grew in the future, we could expand and have a 2nd set of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes out the back right there. And you can see the purple is going to be our elective classes, performing and visual arts, and our athletics are going to be in that area at North Hills Middle School. These are some of the renovated classes or spaces at South Hills. You see where the turf is in the outdoor courtyard? That's part of our special education suite. So our students with disabilities have outdoor access available to them in a safe, appropriate opportunity. So we've tried to capture the space we have as best as possible. Before, this was just a courtyard. Typically, it held a lot of water. It didn't drain very well. By having a simple solution like the turf, it's pretty much usable every day. You can see the 2 classrooms that were set up. We see the improved technology. You see the different types of seating that's available. Again, what's the goal? We want our students to achieve and become the best person they can. If that means they're more comfortable in a beanbag one day, they're more comfortable in a high top, more comfortable in a low top, it gives them part of the ownership in their education as well and provides a little different environment. Some additional classrooms at South Hills. You can see, which I think was one of the most popular things at South Hill, kind of like the 50s diner type seating where you've got the circular table and you've got the soft seating right there for students to sit in and work. The picture with the orange chairs, that's the science classroom. And it actually has a roll-up door, and so the furniture is indoor-outdoor furniture. So if you're doing an experiment or the students on a nice day want the ability to work inside and outside, they have that opportunity with the expectation that you're going to do what you're supposed to be doing at that time. North Hills Middle School construction is coming along quite well as there. The gym has been reorientated and done. This is going to be, I believe, the band room is the other picture. So again, similar to what you would see in most high schools. Some additional pictures of North Hills. Another big part of the change with our middle school is our instructional change, right? So we're looking at how we're going to extend academic blocks in ELA and math, with the idea students are going to be able to learn, explore, and apply the content and skills that they're learning. It's great to know it, but how are you going to apply it? How is it going to be relevant to you now and in the future? And so we believe by having these additional extended academic blocks, it allows for some of that deeper learning that we want to have happen. Prior to this, as a district, we spent pretty much the least amount of time in ELA and math. This really puts us up to a higher level, and we'll have, don't want to say the wrong number, but we'll be in the top 5 as far as amount of time our students are engaged with ELA and math. Still having the opportunity for electives. Music courses I talked a little bit about, how we'll have dedicated spaces for music, for band, for orchestra, and for choir. It's now available daily for students with dedicated spaces, whether it's in new auditoriums, classrooms, breakout practice rooms. Again, I know you'll be taking a tour coming up fairly soon, and I think you'll be impressed with what we're going to be able to offer for our students. STEM labs are going to be phenomenal, right? So dedicated space for coding, esports, computer science principles, separate area like a makerspace for creation, manufacturing, exploration of materials, tools, and prototypes. Really digging in and trying to problem solve. So kind of like the model, if you look at the Stanford D School, where they ideate, prototype, and they go through that whole process, making sure our students understand that as well. And you might have to continue to start over and over until you get the final product you want. Again, part of that is going to be the process of failure, which we learn from. Again, as a former social studies teacher, I can give you all the people that failed over and over and over until eventually they got it right. You're not always going to hit a home run your first try, right? There's some, stick-with-itness that needs to occur as well. And then kind of setting the expectations for opening new construction and renovated schools. Where we are right now, we are in good shape to make sure we have occupancy before school starts and gets in. You also need to understand, and I share this based on 3 decades working on multiple bonds. When you walk in, typically from that first day of school until winter break, there's a punch list of things that are going to need to be done. Oh, that molding's pulling up, we need to do that. After hours are coming in and putting molding here. Oh, that door doesn't shut properly. It's 85 degrees in this room, but it's 45 degrees next door. We need to tweak the HVAC. So understand those type of things are typical as part of the bond process. You're continually working on that punch list. Oh, this drinking fountain worked, now it stopped working, what's going on? The LED lights, they go on and off. The sensor's not working, probably need a new sensor, we'll need to troubleshoot. So those are the expectations that are appropriate. Those are the expectations that are things that are going to occur. It won't be a situation where you walk in and everything operates 100% the way it should from day one. Getting in should not be a problem. And I say that having double-checked today with both Bart and Mallow and double-checked today also with Plant Moran to make sure there are no unforeseen things as far as getting in. And when you drive by some of the buildings, it does become hard to believe, like, how is this really going to be ready by the first day of school? There's always the mad rush at the end. And it's part of the excitement, it's part of the fun. If you're a building administrator, it drives you crazy because you just want to get in and get everything done. I remember as a staff member, when I was still a teacher, there was a front wing added to the building. And I sat there 2 weeks before the first day of school looking out, and there was no wall on the second level, no windows and nothing, thinking to myself, how in the world in 2 weeks is there going to be a wall and windows? Sure enough, there was a wall and windows the first day of school. Now, full story, there was no carpet on the floor, there was just cement. That happened 2 weeks later, right? But the occupancy was there, we were able to get in. So it is an exciting time. Happy to answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, that is my update for tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent Watson. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 5, President update. So, Superintendent Watson, I know I did express that I would keep my comments short, but I'd like to dedicate this time to thanking you for your service to our district. Thanking you for almost 30 years of dedication to education. Those of you who may know or have definitely made several remarks that Superintendent Watson has worked tirelessly for our students, our families, and our community, and it's definitely well noted. Leading us through successful passing of a bond, a pandemic, endless construction projects, right? And so much more. Your labor of love and compassion for our students has been displayed throughout your time here with our district, and it's definitely well noted. You are very much so present. I think it's really hard to not recognize that when you enter a space, we all know your name. When we enter a space with the students, they all want to high five and see if they can get to the top of your fingertips, as I've went through many of tours with the schools with you, and I see how the students connect with you, but also how you connect very personally back with the students. You are a very supportive superintendent, and you've made not only your presence known inside the buildings, but also throughout our community. I've seen firsthand you are very authentic in your interactions with folks. It's very interesting that I see you not just know folks, but you know individual names. And it's not like you planted people along the way, right? It's definitely that you were there and you're able to recognize who they are. We were on a campus recently together, and it was not planted, I promise. We walked out into the space, into this open space on a university's campus, and one of the students was like, "Superintendent Watson," and you would have thought that was one of the most epic moments that I will always cherish, and knowing that you are not just who you are on paper, but you're definitely that person in everything that you do. I won't go and belabor any longer, but just knowing that we thank you, Superintendent Watson, for leading our district and continuing to move us forward. So thank you for your service. Moving on to item number 6, consent agenda. Trustee VanGemert, is there a motion?
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve the recommendations detailed in the consent agenda as follows. Approval of the minutes from the closed session and study session of June 8, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of June 22nd, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the closed session and special meeting of July 11th, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the study session of July 13th, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the special meeting of July 17th, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the special meeting of July 18th, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the special meeting of July 19th, 2023. Approval of the minutes from the special meeting of July 20th, 2023. I also move that the Board of Education approve the disbursement reports as presented by Superintendent Watson. And I move the Board of Education approve the personnel actions as presented by Keith McDonald, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. Board Business Item Number 7-8. Is there a motion? A request to award bid pack number 1044 asbestos abatement at Eastover. Is there a motion?
I move the Board of Education approve bid number 1044, asbestos abatement at Eastover in the amount of $38,200, with the addition of the 10% contingency of $3,820 to Quality Environmental Services Incorporated, bringing the total approved budget to $42,020 to be funded by the 2020 bond fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Mr. McDermott? Any questions?
None.
No.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7B, the approval of the purchase of iPads for the elementary school. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education award purchase of iPads, cases, and carts through the state's REMC Cooperative Bid Consortium for the amount of $42,156.40, funded from the bond fund. Funds will be allocated as follows: towards Apple Inc. for $35,280 through REMC number 196001, Bloom, spelled B-L-U-U-M, for $2,720.40 through REMC number 230010, and Precision Data in the amount of $4,156 through REMC number 230050.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions?
So can you compare and contrast this setup versus what, like, is there anything similar in the middle school, or is it totally different in terms of what's set up?
So think about, in the elementary, we've got those new Ingenuity STEAM labs. And so the work is going to, there's some new curriculum coming out, and this is going to support that specifically. So no, we don't really have an analog to this in any other places in the building so far.
And then on the carts, so there's 4 carts. Like, how much is it literally put them in to charge? Is it just a big charging bank for iPads?
Yeah, charging bank as well as management as well. So Terex, the cool thing is it plugs into the network, so we can do upgrades, push apps, monitor health of it, all those kinds of things.
So is it a part, like, at the end of the day, the kids all have, like, can the kids put them back in?
Absolutely.
Or is a lab person? Okay.
Yeah, and they're used to that. So they're already in their media centers currently.
Yeah.
They'll go and they'll grab, Chromebooks or iPads, depending on the devices. They typically know. Maybe our littlest ones might have a little more challenge there, but yeah, they're used to this.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions or discussion? A vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carry 7-0. Item number 7C, request to award bid T5 paging system. Is there a motion?
I move that the Board of Education award bid pack T5 to Amcom Telecommunications for the amount of $718,200, funded from the bond and capital equipment funds as outlined in the recommendation letter.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion?
I guess my question is, this is in the original book that we put out to the community?
Yeah, for paging, clocks, and notification systems, yes.
And as I read through, it reminded me a while back when you talked, like, is this a part of where this would go into, like, visual notifications?
Exactly.
So
Exactly, Tarek. So when you think about, so when we started the bond design program, right, so we knew we would need paging, we need clocks, basic things. But we have a center program for DHH. We have Wing Lake. We have actually people who are in our buildings who are blind. And so we've always struggled around technology that's worked for all of those groups, particularly when it comes to safety and security. And so we did pilots. So early on, our boards approved pilots to do. So we did pilots here, we did East Hills, and it helped to form the design that we obviously went with in this. But the key takeaway is now you will have in each classroom, I'm just going to generalize because there's some places that have some other different nuances, but your spaces where you have students and staff, there'll be things from a strobe to a paging speaker, as well as text on there. And then there's some color codes as well with that. So those are all the things that it'll provide.
Okay, and it says for BHS, IA, and Eastover. So are like everybody else is outfitted at this point?
No,
or
not
this
yet.
is
It's all
just-
part of the phasing of this process.
Okay.
So it's good to know. So East Hills, we moved, let me take you back to get an idea of the timeline. So in phase one of this, I'll just call it phase one of this, we really had North Hills and South Hills doing this.
Right.
And that was part of the plan. Late last spring, East Hills Middle School, which will be Eastover now, their paging system failed. So we're like, let's accelerate that work. Let's get it going there. Traub that building was never part of the bond program. And that's where we're using capital equipment funds out of that. And that they have a 35, 40-year-old paging system as well. So we wanted to make sure we included them in this work. And then the high school, of course, it needs this. That system that was put in was outdated when it was installed. And so this will give us, so much more capabilities.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I remember you talking about it. I feel like we're in the auditorium. I don't remember where we were, but you were talking about it, and I said, oh yeah, that makes total sense. If there was a safety issue and you have somebody who has, different ways of interpreting those messages, how would they know? And
Exactly.
it never dawned on me that you have to have some way of alerting people, and that would make sense to have that at every single facility. So I'm glad we're going through it.
And it's also exterior as well. So if you're out in the playground and there's some kind of incident, let's say there's a tornado warning that pops up, you're out, maybe probably not out if there's a tornado watch, but you know what I'm getting at. And you might get that alert, and so then you can go and find shelter. Also, too, keep in mind, this is part of a larger notification system for safety and security for the whole district. So this will grow and evolve to everything from like our digital signages that we have. You'll get alerts and information there, to our cell phones, to right now it already works to our desk phones, actually work to our desktops. So this will actually notify and alert, and there'll be other communication capabilities. So you may see a scenario where, like Tarek, you and I we're sheltered in place for a tornado in a bathroom, but we need to communicate out. We can actually use that notification system and communicate, hey, we're safe, we're sitting in here, we've got 7 kids, we're in the bathroom. So we'll have those capabilities. Now we got to obviously build that out as it goes along, and this is a multi-year project. So we've been at this really now, this will be year 3 coming up. So we've been at this for a little while.
Yeah, okay.
It's pretty cool, though.
Yeah,
It's something to be proud of. There's only a couple other schools. There's only one other school in the state that has, and we're kind of, they eke ahead of us, we eke ahead. And then in the country, there's a few handfuls that are doing as much to this. What was very interesting, and it's worth noting, is working with DHH, a couple schools in the state of Michigan, deaf and hard of hearing schools, as well as a university. We're going to have more than they have, which surprised me. And it's always important to know this is for all of our families. I have deaf and hard of hearing in my family, so I understand the challenges that becomes when you walking through. We take it for granted, but you're in a hallway and there's noise behind you. You may never know what's happening, and so having those visuals, having other people be able to react to that is incredibly important for those families and our community members, and of course our students and staff.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Tristan.
So Dave, how long are is the remaining build out for the other facilities?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a shock. Conant and Way had some issues, so we're accelerating that work right now. That wouldn't be from next summer. So really, if you thought about it, those 4 elementaries would not get it until next summer. Conant Way will be getting it here in the fall. Eastover will. West Hills will be the only outlier that'll come into the next summer, currently. Timeline subject to change, but
And then with that, we'll be done with.
then we will be done. I take that back. We'll still have We'll still have somewhere outlined, like our Dublin building, that's at the very end. So that, if you guys know, that's a little ranch that sits in one of our parking lots that has a recreation, or I'm sorry, a DHH administrative staff and BYA that sits in there. That'll come at the very end. And then depending on where transportation, those will be at the end as well. So there's some of those outlier kind of buildings. Bowers and the Farm Nature Center, they will get that next summer as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0. Okay, moving on to item number 7D, request to approve Bloomfield Hills Association Instructional Assistance Contract. Is there a motion?
I move the Board of Education to approve the tentative agreement with the Bloomfield Hills Instructional Assistance Association as presented.
Is there a second? Second. It's been properly moved and seconded. Moving into discussion. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 7E, request to approve the Michigan Education Support Personnel Association's contract. Is there a motion?
Sure. The Secretary Union represents secretaries across the district. Their current collective bargaining agreement expired on June 30th, 2023. The parties have been negotiating for a successor labor agreement and reached a tentative agreement on July 19th, 2023. The employees ratified the agreement on July 24th, 2023. The agreement will be brought for a board vote on July 27, 2023. Changes in contract language will not take effect until the board approves the tentative agreement.
Okay, it's more of a discussion.
I don't think
It's
that's a
more of a
motion.
discussion.
Is there
Yeah.
something?
It was written.
I guess it
It's more of a
sounds like
discussion.
we will, yeah, I mean, there's a vote here, so do we?
So today's the 27th.
Correct.
So,
Maybe take the language from above.
Yeah. Let's see, okay.
I move that the Board of Education approve the tentative agreement with the Bloomfield Hills Secretary Union as presented.
Second.
Thank you for the revised. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the revised motion? You do. It's very short.
I'm going to amend the motion to read as follows. I move the Board of Education to approve the tentative agreement with the Bloomfield Hills Educational Support Personnel Association as presented.
So we have to vote on the amendment. So this is just to vote to accept the amended changes. So all those in, is there a second to the amended recommend changes?
Should be the Michigan Educational Support Personnel Association or Bloomfield's?
Yes, that would be the correct title.
The Michigan is
Michigan Educational
Support Personnel Association. As shown in the,
On the,
Printout.
in the proposal.
All right, let me correct the amendment. I move the Board of Education approve the tentative agreement with with the Michigan Educational Support Personnel Association as presented.
Now this is just a vote on the amendment to the motion. So all those in favor to the amended motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, so now we vote on the 7-0 for the amendment, and then any discussion on the proposal. Okay, now you got to read it again.
I do. Okay. I move the Board of Education approve the tentative agreement with Michigan Educational Support Personnel Association as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so the motion has now been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 7-0. Thank you for that, John. I'd like to motion for a short recess.
Second.
Do I
wasn't
supposed to motion. Can I have a motion?
You can just decide.
Yes. There's a motion, it's been seconded, and we are gonna, any vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're gonna take a short 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
All right, we'd like to call the Bloomfield Hills Board of Education meeting for July 27th back to order. And we are proceeding now to item number 7F, which is superintendent search, next steps discussion. Trustee Colin.
Okay, yeah, so I wanted this on the agenda. So 2 weeks ago, we decided to delay this to get more community feedback. And also, Trustee Follow was not here 2 weeks ago. So before I kind of go through some of the feedback that we've gotten, I want to give an opportunity to our trustee who wasn't here to express his viewpoint if he has any at this point.
Yeah, so appreciate that, so I'll take them all. I wrote down my thoughts because I didn't want to get, and to be honest, I had written down thoughts as I was flying. And I'm like, I reached out to President Southward, and I'm like, oh, should I try to, and it didn't seem right to not be there and try to send and not have an ability to have a discussion. So, I wasn't there. I wish that I'd been present for the meeting. I had a prior obligation that I couldn't get out of that I knew about, was on the calendar, but even if I could have attended remotely, I still wouldn't have been able to vote, so really was kind of inconsequential. But I want to give my thoughts. I wasn't there. I watched the entire thing, not just once, but twice, to really make sure that I understood everybody's viewpoints and took that into consideration. But the decision of determining the next superintendent for our school district is the biggest one that we make as we're serving on this board. It's one of the few areas where the board not only has or can make such an impactful decision, but we have the obligation to perform the duties and ensure the success for our entire educational community, which includes our staff, teachers, parents, and of course the students. At the start of this process, I voiced my concern that we had to be careful about moving too quickly, even though we did need to proceed on and try to move, but without unnecessary haste. And it's a delicate balance to find that we need to obtain. We're about to start the school year. Everybody's focus is on having a successful opening. The start of any school year is always filled with a sense of trying to put out fires, plan and prepare, and deal with changes as they happen in real time. And now add on to the fact that we are going through major transitions, and then that creates the additional stress and burdens that we all have, and I understand. Nevertheless, I want to make sure that we don't lose sight on what our objective here is, which is to find the right superintendent to lead our school district. The objective isn't to have one in place when we start the school year, nor is it to have one by the time that the interim tenure concludes. We must never lose sight that even though we have so many short-term needs in front of us, the long-term implications of making a bad decision are extremely significant for a much larger population of students. While I did not cast a vote at the table, I'll state what I would have done if I had been present, which is I would have voted to not move any candidates forward to the next round. And this is not a slight against any of them, including those who were not moved to the first round initially from our initial pool. Every candidate we looked at had unbelievable skills, abilities, talents that illustrate exactly why they are involved in education. However, our search isn't focused on finding someone with certain highlighted skill sets. We're looking to find what I said before, a cartographer and a captain for our school district, someone who can design the map for what our school district will look like and simultaneously navigate the waters to get us there. I watched the whole meeting twice. Not only would I have not selected a candidate to move forward, I would also have not voted for the eventual motion which passed at the table, and would have tried to offer this dialogue and get my thoughts out. I just went through hiring for a position on my team at work. As we went from narrowing our applicant pool first down to the successful phone screen candidates, then to our first round candidates, and then to our second round candidates, we never closed our posting. Why? Because at any point in the process, even at the end, things can go south. It's happened to me multiple times where we have a candidate who decides to not accept the offer at the end, pursue something different, go in a different direction, or have an interview with someone else, and that changes my perspective of the candidate. Things like that are bound to happen. After having worked in education for many years, I still don't understand, and this is not a knock against us or just in general, why we have these strange expiration dates for job postings at times when it doesn't seem like it's helpful. If we have a possibility that we may need to continue on with the process, where would we start? At the beginning, it's cumbersome and can end up costing us even more in the long run. Leaving the posting open keeps our options open and allows us to pick up right where we left off. I would also offer the simple fact that due to no one's fault, our community had very little time to give adequate feedback to our board to help inform us in our decision-making process. I'll speak for myself when I state that community feedback is one of the biggest points of information I take into my consideration for the position. After interviews being conducted and streamed, the community had very little time to engage and provide feedback, and we as trustees had even less time to take that feedback into full consideration. It's understandable that we feel the need to move quickly, but I always think of the famous John Wooden quote of, "Be quick, but don't hurry," when faced with situations like this. If we don't have a superintendent by the time our interim departs, then all is not lost. We can determine if we want to find another external candidate to perform the duties, or we can task someone internally with those same duties. It's been done before in recent times, and in my opinion would be a far preferable option than to make a bad decision simply because we feel pressured by arbitrary deadlines. I would ask the entire group to reflect on the interview process and ask the pivotal questions which we must all consider. Can you imagine these candidates being the next superintendent of our school district? Can you imagine them successfully dealing with a difficult situation such as the one we were recently involved in? Can you imagine them inspiring our staff to grow in a way which positively affects our students? Can you imagine them engaging with students and having the kinds of interactions we know brings on a sense of pride and belonging for becoming a Blackhawk? Can you imagine collaborating with them, agreeing, disagreeing, and navigating difficult decisions as a team of 8? Unless you can quickly and confidently say yes to all of those questions, then I don't believe our current course of action to be the correct course of action. It's our duty and responsibility to make the tough decisions the best we can, working diligently until we get there. It's not our burden, nor is it the expectation of our staff, teachers, parents, and students that we make a decision by a certain date. I am just one voice on this team, but I urge you all to consider my opinion, weigh our options fully as we proceed on the process. This is hard work, make no mistake. However, by taking our time, we will reap the benefit of this effort in the future, and so too will our entire community. Thank you.
Other comments?
I mean, I personally want to continue with the process. I think it's important to follow what is tradition and what other school boards do. We picked 5-1, 2 candidates, and I would like to move forward. If they're not the right candidates, I think we need time to assess that. I think it's very hard to assess that with an interview where we ask the same 21 questions. And I think by waiting till the school's year is open in September, we can assess whether they would be a good fit for our school district. If they're not, we can decide after that point. We could even move it if there's so much parental feedback. Maybe we should consider having the parents and the students meet them in August. If there's so many, emails coming in now, maybe people are ready to meet them actually, and for us to decide whether they're right. That's my feedback, at least for right now.
I would like to add that I echo everything Tarek said. It's the most important decision the board can take. We have to work at it for as long as it takes. Postponing it from the second round interviews from this week to after school starts was part of that because we wanted to make sure we got parent, community, and student feedback because we all felt that was equally important. So I think, as Carolyn mentioned, we haven't had the chance to assess these candidates, and neither has the community. I think for us to reopen the process now is a slight to those candidates. And I think we ought to go through the process with those candidates, get their feedback, and make an assessment. We all take our job very seriously. I don't think anybody at this table is lackadaisical about their roles and responsibilities. So I think we ought to give them a chance and make an honest assessment as to whether each one of us feel they would be a good fit for the job. But to go back now and to reopen the process before assessing those candidates, one, I think would be a slap in the face of those candidates, and two, it sends a poor message about our district to all the potential candidates out there that we're constantly second-guessing our decisions. I mean, we always reserve the right, and it was discussed in the meeting, that if the candidates weren't a fit, we were going to continue to look. So I feel, like Carolyn said, that we ought to go through the motion, we ought to pick a date, and if we think it's not going to be late in September, it's got to be earlier in September, I'm all for it. But I think it's time to give the candidates a chance and be fair to them, and then come to the decision at that point whether we reopen the search or not. Thank
Other
you.
comments? Trustee VanGemert.
So, right, the last time that this board, not this board, but the board of Bloomfield Hills Schools entertained a new candidate, it was Superintendent Watson. He was a principal. People met with him. They were enamored with how he interacted with people, right? Well, no one's had the opportunity to do that with these candidates. And I understand, and I don't fault my fellow board members. I know that we all want what's best for this district. But I caution that it's a little bit dysfunctional to do so. We committed to this process by a public vote. We committed to these candidates by a public vote. I'm not inclined to show these two candidates or anyone else that could be a candidate for this job or any other job in the district that a majority vote of this board is meaningless, right? And to deal with this board means uncertainty, okay? So my vote last week meant that I wanted to hear more from these two candidates. Didn't mean that I wanted either one of them to be the superintendent. I want to hear more from these two candidates, okay? And at the end, I can choose to make my vote to hire one of these candidates or to hire neither of these candidates. And that doesn't screw up anything with trying to find anyone else later if I choose not to, right? And so my decision remains the same. I put forward the two candidates. I'm going to stick with that decision and move forward.
I'd just like to thank you, Tarek, for your comments. And coming back to your original point, my position remains the same as last week. And I think that what happened at the board table last week was somewhat misleading when we say it was a 5-to-1 vote. That's neither here nor there. But my position was very strongly that I wanted to continue to seek out other applicants, and I did not want to push any candidates forward. Some details unfolded at the table that were complicated, and leave that as it may. Similar to you, my concern is not over these two candidates. My concern is over, and has been before we saw any applications, my concern is over this feeling like an extremely rushed process. And yes, what might be demonstrated is disjointed dysfunction, because I don't think that we are acting intuitively according to our needs. We're acting according to other procedures in other districts that I don't know necessarily make sense. I think we have to be in tune with the needs of our district right now. And Tarek, to your point, I voiced concerns early on. I voiced concerns that we needed an interim. We were told by MLI that we didn't need an interim. I think it would have been a mistake if we did not have one in place today as Superintendent Watson leaves. So it's not a slight against these candidates. It's a slight against what feels like a rushed process. Ironically, you weren't here last week because you had a pre-planned obligation that you couldn't get out of. And as we sat as a board, and I said, this feels rushed, we're trying to jam in this decision, jam in when we're doing the interviews, when we're talking to people, we're trying to do it too quickly. We need to take our time. And we had to pick a date, and we picked a date when a trustee couldn't be here. And I think that was a mistake to do that, and it was at the advice of MLI, and I think that we as a board should have slowed down at that time. While I do understand and concern having respect for the candidates' feelings, when they apply for these positions, they're putting themselves out there publicly, and that's a big deal, and we do have to respect that. I do simultaneously respect that, but place the needs of our district before their needs, their emotional needs. Our district needs us to continue to keep this posting open. Tarek, I agree with you. In my line of work, you do not close a job posting until it is filled. There are things out of our control. Each of these candidates could, for whatever reasons that we don't know, not be available in September. And then we've lost 6 weeks of talking to other potential candidates and placed the needs of this entire district, of our students, of our staff, on hold for the emotional needs of the candidates who applied. I would submit to you that if these candidates have the mental strength that it takes to do this job, they would recognize that this is what's in the best needs, best interests of this district. That trying to rush them through this past week to go through empty schools, not be able to talk to staff and students, would have been a massive mistake. I think if they truly have the best interest of Bloomfield Hills School District in mind, they would respect this, and they would see that we are doing something that is best for our staff, which is to continue to keep the posting open. It's not saying that they shouldn't be advanced at another date. It's saying that we have to fulfill the biggest duty we have as a board, and putting it on pause for 6 weeks and continuing to have this disjointed way in which we go about it, open, close, interview, decide. Perhaps it's a standard procedure in the public education system that, like you, I'm not accustomed to in my job, that we keep searching, recruiters keep recruiting, we keep doing our due diligence on a candidate until the proper spot is filled, period.
So, if I may, I think,
Go ahead.
from my opinion, as one person, is unlike most of our employment or employers, this particular job is required to be displayed in an open meeting, during open conversations and open dialogue. As we think about hiring in our own spaces, there's 2 options that we have. Either we would continue the process or we would not move forward with the process and open it up for additional candidates. So unlike our current employers, I could not watch on television your interview or my interview for a position and to see that person either be advanced or not advanced, to go back to the pool. That's a very open conversation that doesn't happen in our current workplaces. So in that respect to the process, I think we did hear a lot about the process being felt rushed, and that's been very consistent from Trustee Fowler and Trustee Hill, so I do appreciate the fact that we did have a chance to have an open conversation about moving the process to the fall semester to allow for more feedback, which also still allows for the candidates that I still believe to be capable. And I'd like to see more. Much like Trustee VanGemert's point, we have not had a chance to finish out the process. It does not mean at the end of the day that either of these persons will become our next superintendent, but is it a possibility? I would say that anything's possible, either way. So for me, I would prefer that we honor our original decision and move forward to finding a date for September to bring these candidates to our district. Trustee Kumar, you were going to say something?
Yeah, so I did want to point out that there was a calendar set out by MLA. The date ended, and there was a specific process to follow for those candidates. So it's not a question of flipping the gates back open. A new calendar needs to be developed all over again, and a new window needs to be set up that this board needs to work with MLA on. So what's the end date for once you open it? It rarely is an open end date from what I've been told. I'm happy to reopen.
question of
I mean,
why.
I'm happy to get into that possibility, but I'm saying we first need to go through the process of meeting with these two candidates, having a fair assessment of them, and then have an MLI discussion after that point. And it's not just a question of turning on a switch like you would back on a company website. I have HR report to me in my company. I've recruited 30 people in the last 3 months. It's a lot different in the corporate world. So anyways, enough.
What you need to think about, I think, is that the type of, I don't want to disparage the candidates that we have before us, but the type of candidate that I think people are looking for is someone that maybe is already a superintendent. That person's not going to put their name in the hat. That they're going to want to have a directed conversation where they don't upset their current employer, that kind of stuff. So if we're to try to poach somebody or do something like along those lines, like you can't do it in this fashion where we have, them show up, and then if they don't get the job, they have to go back home to wherever their district is and say, oh, sorry, I was looking for another job. Like, it's just not going to work that way. So the candidate that you're looking for that may be a superintendent already isn't going to show up in a situation where they might not get the job. So it's going to be a struggle, I think, and I know we wanted to look for people that may not be in education. We got one of those resumes. That person, of all the people, was not qualified to do this job, right? I mean, we had 26 people, right? And one of them, their relevant experience was minimal, okay? So I don't know that we're going to find, the only person I think that would come to this setup would be someone from outside of education, but I think someone that is already in a position that they like, but they might want to move forward. It's going to be hard to come into this arena, be one of 4, and then they don't get it and they have to go home and their interviews on YouTube where their boss or their board is going to say, what are you doing? So this is a difficult process.
That we received 25 applications at a time of year when another consulting firm, search firm, had warned us that this is the hardest time of year to recruit. So I've heard in some dialogue with some people, you're not going to get any more applicants. We had a window open for 5 weeks at the worst time of year to have the window open. So I think that speculating as to what we will and will not get in the future is you're trying to prove a negative. If we've been at this for 6 months, that would be one thing, but to the theme of this feeling rushed, and I just want to state also, I think we as a board can acknowledge that in the past week, we have received an overwhelming amount of feedback from this community via email. I've received it outside the emails, but all the emails addressed to the board we've all seen. An overwhelming amount of feedback from our community asking us specifically to do what Tarek eloquently outlined in the beginning, which Paul and I talked about last week, which was please continue to leave this open, go about it in that way. I did not receive one email to the contrary. So while we saw feedback, we get feedback from MLI, we cannot ignore the feedback of our community, which has been very loud.
So,
I would say that although that may be the case, I've actually had, even today, I've had some interactions with some folks that had positive things to say about at least one of the candidates that's coming forward. So I think that to just say that there isn't any feedback isn't a fair assessment of.
That's two different things, though. That's feedback on the candidates. Candidate-specific, I mean, that's a different
But the
topic, and
emails
I've heard good and bad in that, and I don't want to open that door. I don't think this is the place. That's why I don't think this is the time. That's why I said,
Well,
this was a concern I had
If
prior
I
to
can-
we
if
saw
I can-
ever a
But
resume.
if I can finish though, Megan, I think the comment was that you don't see that any of these persons moving forward. And so I think that to my original point was that I've heard positive things about the candidates and hoping that they could actually be able to interact with our community for a second round interview. And so I think that to say that there hasn't been receiving of positivity in the other direction isn't a fair assessment. It may be that we are getting, a lot. I would say that there are a lot of emails that we are receiving from the community, and they're welcome.
So-
I think to me, what I would love to see us to do is to have a chance to actually go through the process before we've even said the process isn't something we want to do. We haven't even done step 2 to allow that community engagement, and I'd love to be able to have that interaction with our candidates.
All right, so we're looking at 6 weeks from now, right? Is that essentially, is the ask that we open it back up, people can submit their resumes up until whenever, and that there's a new timeline for these new people, and if we choose one of the candidates that we already have, we just shut it down and send out an email, sorry, we selected one of the candidates we already have? Or are we saying that we want to get them involved in this same round that we're in right now? And thirdly, if it is only 6 weeks, why can't, and we want to take our time, why can't we just wait until this round is over? And if 4 of us are convinced that none of these people are viable candidates, then we start again in 6 weeks. I guess I don't understand what we're doing today.
Can I clarify why my suggestion was that?
Sure.
So that we don't engage in dialogue regarding these candidates. That's why my suggestion last week was, can we push this off? And to clarify, Michelle Appoint, I did not say I couldn't see either of these two moving forward. My position was, I want to extend this process. I specifically said that because I don't want anything to appear in any way disparaging against either of them. I have not drawn a conclusion about them in any way. It's that this felt rushed and I wanted to move it forward. So to your point, if we go through this, then we are going to have to start evaluating criteria up and down that might be an exposure that we might not necessarily have to put them through until we've extended this process and seen more resumes. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? That I don't want to go through the process of saying second round, potentially hearing feedback from the community and putting these candidates through something that could disparage them in the end. I'm not saying that there's any indications that there would be, but that's the potential that could occur, and that's what I was trying to avoid by asking last week, can we go ahead and not pick 2 today? That's why I had that position, was to protect them.
So my viewpoint, that's why I wanted to open up the discussion. So I was probably like 5 months ago, I was at a PTOC meeting, and a lot of the leaders of our community asked the question, and my answer was, if I didn't feel it was a right fit, if we needed to wait 6 months, a year and a half, we would work on, and our committee did a great job putting an interim process in place to help open our schools. What I'm hearing, what I've heard 2 weeks, this is why I want to have this discussion, what I'm hearing now is a lot of doubt that these candidates, and this has nothing to do to Megan and Tariq and everyone's point, has nothing to do with them personally and their character, is that we have doubt whether or not they would be a right fit for our community. And the overwhelming theme that we've gotten has nothing to do about the candidates' pros and cons, is they would not be a right fit for our community. We need to take the time and see, after our schools open, new interim, Superintendent Watson gave a great presentation about what it's going to look like, let everything simmer down. We will have candidates that will apply, that we all won't have doubt, and will find the right fit.
Right.
But I guess
we've
I don't
already voted.
understand.
I guess this is the same thing as, this happens with this board. I can cite many examples of times where we have a vote, and then the people, whoever decides that that's not the way they wanted it to go, we come back. We've had how many discussions about moving some of the bond money over to the International Academy, where I have to say, no, we're going to do what the bond says. This, there's over and over again on this board, if you're on the side, not you, I could be on the side of the 3, but whoever's on the side of the 2 or the 3, they really want something, we have to rehash it. We've already voted 4 people forward. I'm just trying to ask what the ask is as far as if we're going to, if we want to reopen the accepting of resumes, things like that. I'm not opposed to that necessarily, but I do want to give these two individuals the time to come in and do their second interview. And we've already established that 4 people want that, so we're not going to, what are we doing right now?
So are you saying you'd want to open it up for more resumes to come in?
I would be fine with that, but I'd also want to hear from these 2 candidates that I already made a decision on last week. I'm not here to reassess my decision that I already made, and it's
Well,
been
John, I
made
mean,
by
in
the
fairness,
board.
I understand that does get old to have issues continuously brought up, but sometimes decisions are made with limited information, limited understanding, additional facts and understanding, and comes forward, so
Right.
that would be, I mean, I haven't been on as long as you, so I haven't had the opportunity to be as frustrated by that as you, but in this situation, this is the single most important thing we do, so if ever there's a time to have continuous dialogue and debate, this would be it.
I don't disagree with that, but again, like I said earlier, I'm not, no one here is saying that we're voting for either of these 2 individuals to be the next superintendent. We're saying that we're open to that possibility, and 4 people are open to that possibility. We voted on it last week, and other than some community feedback, we can call it overwhelming. I've been on this board for a long time, and I've gotten more feedback on other issues, to be honest, a lot more. Now, I might be inviting more feedback now, and that's fine. I want more feedback, right? But I just don't see, like, and as you said, new information comes to light. The only new information is that there are community members that don't see these individuals, and I'm fine with that. I'll take that information in as we move forward, but I'm not ready today to change my mind.
And I wasn't even coming from the perspective of the community. I don't know if I even mentioned it. I was mentioning it from my perspective of watching it, coming away with my perspective of going through all the candidates, and then watching and saying, I don't know if I felt like an overwhelming amount of, yes, absolutely. I mean, there was debate about how to proceed on, and there was a vote at the end, but to me it wasn't, it didn't feel like a definitive, overwhelming amount of positivity with, everybody had, Megan made a change in how she voted ultimately to get to the 5-1. It didn't feel like there was an overwhelming clear path forward of saying, yeah, it's everybody said I'd like to hear a little bit more. My only point was, and that's fine, you're right, you guys have voted, and that's okay. I'm not trying to sway the vote. I'm giving my feedback, which is that, to me, during this process, I always went back to the point of, and John from MLI said, you have to be able to see this person in this capacity doing this role. And if there's ever a point where that's not true, then that's where my feedback comes in to say, then I'm not going to proceed on with that. So I'm giving you my perspective. It's less about, I know we get emails, I know there's feedback that I take into consideration, but that was strictly from me watching it and saying, this is how I viewed it, this is how I would have proceeded, this is exactly the dialogue I would have had at the table, and take it as you may. I agree, you've already voted, and I'm not trying to sway, I'm giving my perspective, and that's simply it.
So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what we're doing, what is the ask today? What would we like to have happen?
Well, the ask today, obviously from my point of view, and everyone's clear, my point of view is not to move forward, but what I'm hearing is some sort of compromise that we do, majority of us want to pull in other resumes. So I can make a motion for us to pull in other resumes for the next 2 months as part of this process.
I don't know if that's the,
That's
I don't,
Well, this is what I'm hearing, and I'm happy to make a motion if the majority feels as part of this process. My feeling is we should start over, but if that's not the majority, but as a compromise to bring in more resumes, happy to make a motion to do that.
Why can't we have the discussion first with those 2 candidates and then make that motion, right?
Because we lose time and we don't know that
We
they're
just
guaranteed.
said we're going to work at it for as long as it takes,
But-
right?
but
To
we-
get it right.
But we don't, yes, and that I
So-
appreciate that, but we don't know what their situation is and whether they'll be available in September. I mean, listen, the community we've been through several really, really hard years. Teachers, educators, students have had extremely hard years. Being a board member is a challenge right now in today's climate. Everyone's on edge about this, and it's hard. It's hard to hear the community feedback, the desperation. People want calm and they want consistency. We want a long-term, excellent leader for our district. That's what everyone here is trying to achieve.
I think one of
So
the
are
other
we, and
points.
that's all 7 of us.
One of the
That's
other,
what
one
I
of the
wanna
other,
achieve.
yeah.
I just want to make the point that this is creating calm to follow the process the way it's supposed to work. We're not supposed to change it in midway after we've gone through all these interviews. In my opinion, I only have one vote, and I feel like some of the hearts and minds are already made up on our candidates, and that's why you're trying to change the process.
One of the things that we were reminded is, just like we're interviewing candidates, potential candidates are also interviewing us. And so as we are having this conversation, how healthy is this for any future superintendent if we move forward or don't move forward with our current candidates? So I would just caution that as we are having this conversation, that we think about any potential superintendent is also watching us, just like we're watching them, interviewing them. So whatever decision we make today, moving forward, we have to just be very mindful that as a board, to John's point, we've made a decision. We should honor the decision, and to Trustee Noble's point, we should follow the process.
And just one other point, I really think if someone really wants to be the next superintendent of Bloomfield Hills, and these two candidates, for whatever reason, aren't voted in as the next superintendent, someone will wait to apply when it's open again. This 6 weeks are not going to make that difference for this candidate you're trying to find. Or we'll get no candidates, or very bad quality candidates. So we'll see what happens, but I think we should go through this process and see
If they were going to be ready
how
in
these two
September, they would have
individuals
applied this
do
time,
well.
like this round. So whoever's coming up in September is going to be someone that's probably going to start in January or at the end of the school year, so that they can fulfill their obligations wherever they are. That there's not going to be someone that's just loose in the wind, you know?
I mean, we can debate about it. I think I've said everything that I have to say on this. I think I've covered it personally.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to make a motion then, based on what I heard. I move that the Board of Education open up the superintendent search process to include more resumes.
Second.
There is a motion on the table, and it's been properly moved and seconded. We'll have discussion on the motion.
Can we refine that to
You can make
be-
any amendment to my motion that you.
All right, read it off one more time. Motion to open, what's the rest of it?
Open the superintendent search to include more resumes.
Is there a motion? Amendment to the motion?
Would anyone be open to, instead of this just being open to more resumes, asking Mr. Silveri to like direct a search and find us? I guess my point here is that we have a candidate with some, with 4 candidates like with specific quality or sorry, with specific credentials, like versus just opening it wide up and coming back to us and saying, I found these specific people, you know, as opposed to just blasting it out on, you know.
You're saying direct
A di-
MLI to go out specifically and solicit candidates?
Yeah,
as
solicit
opposed
specific
to a
candidates
public
as opposed,
posting.
right.
Is that legal for
I don't know.
Michigan Education Association or state of Michigan? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not really sure how that process works either. But I would say in my conversation with, and I think he was very transparent with also with his, the process, is that he did speak with superintendents that are sitting superintendents as well as potential superintendents. So I guess going back to the original point that, John, you made before is, what are we looking to as the outcome? And if we're not looking to quote unquote cast doubt in the current folks that we have selected, I'm not really sure what this continuing to go back and bringing resumes forward would do. I think it actually does cast doubt.
John, do you have an amendment? to
I do
mine?
not.
I think the community is watching and also seeing how we're working together, and it creates doubt in these candidates. If we were all supportive of going through the process, I think the community would also be supportive to a degree, because the people I talk to are wanting us to be strategic, but also very even-handed in being here.
I wouldn't say we're not even-handed. We're just having open dialogue, and there's some doubt, and some of us would like to add more resumes to the pool. And me personally, I would have liked to start over, but I'm not debating that the majority of us doesn't want to start over. But what I'm hearing is the majority of us want to add more candidates to the pool. And I think we're just having open dialogue.
Paul, I think a proper amendment to your motion would be to re-engage conversation, to open up for more resumes, and consult and do our due diligence in a way to make sure, and again, this is vague, do it in a way to make sure that it obviously complies with Michigan law. That could be the caveat to the motion, is that we open it up in a way that would do that. So we can leave that out there, and then we can put parameters and define it by, I know, please, don't, don't type that down. Don't type that, I'm thinking about it. I'm just trying to think of a way to phrase it in a way that we achieve what we want, which
Yeah,
is
I
to
mean,
obtain
take-
more resumes in a legally compliant way, and make sure that we are doing our due diligence to comply with those standards. I'm sorry. But I get the spirit of what you're trying to say, and we can achieve that tonight without having the direct answer on what that is.
Yeah, so what John was trying to say, just again, add in some legal, as long as it's,
I don't know that I'm ready to vote yes on the motion today because I don't know exactly what we're voting on. I'm open to something, but I'm not open to just saying, let's get more resumes.
Certainly, there has to be a way for us to collect more resumes at this time as a board. We can do that in a way that complies with Michigan law. We don't have it written into the motion exactly to ensure that our bases are covered, but that is possible to do.
So I think I don't want to stop the conversation. So because I want to make sure that I'm being fair to the process. But since we have so many unknowns, and right now we can go back and write 1,000 things down, could we possibly maybe let me have a conversation with John Severi as to how, so we don't go down the wrong tunnel? And I know that we don't have a meeting for a few weeks for a study session.
is it
So maybe
not,
perhaps.
is it not in 2 weeks? When's the
Yeah,
next
I
There's
said
one
a
in
few.
2
I
weeks.
said a
2 weeks,
well, a
2
couple weeks. 2, yeah, I know. A few is 3. My apologies, technicalities. But so perhaps maybe, I know we don't typically vote at study sessions, but not saying we're going to do whatever, but I think instead of us just haphazardly coming up with something, perhaps maybe just throwing it out there, that we go back to the conversation at our study session as opposed to making a motion, whether it passes or not, that doesn't reflect what we intend to do.
So
Just putting it out there,
which is fine. So what I'm hearing is, right, so
or not
at this-
having the conversation altogether.
at the study session, so we're going to do some more diligence with John and with legal, ask, what we want, and see how it can be interpreted in a motion. that fits the needs.
Yeah, and I am not in favor, but I want to make sure that I am being fair and impartial to the process. So I just want to make sure that I'm transparent in saying, although I don't support us going back, but I want to make sure that what we present is a motion that supports what you intend to reflect. Just
Yeah, no,
suggestion.
I'm not supportive of it as written. I don't know exactly what could, I'm not,
It
I'm
phrased
not,
it in a way so that we asked Mr. Silveri, who was the majority board selected
like,
coordinator, to be present or present a memorandum or something to us by the next study session so that we can evaluate it at that time and make sure that we're proceeding in a way that covers all of our bases.
So perhaps maybe if there is a motion, it should probably be to go back and have a fact-finding opportunity with John Severi. Then that way, if folks are in support of us doing that, we don't have to, or we can just say we're tabling this discussion to the study session that is in 2 weeks.
The other thing we could do is to try to meet with those candidates as soon as possible, right? School starts, I believe, September 5th, is that right? I think Rebecca did circulate a doodle survey, and I think two folks had, their primary conflicts. I think it was Paul and Michelle. Maybe you guys are out of town, or I don't know what's going on, but you guys weren't available till late September. If this is such a pressing issue, Paul, can we pull it ahead or figure out a way to make this meet sooner?
Well, wasn't the goal of 2 weeks ago to be when school's back, when everyone's back? So when you say meet sooner, I mean,
Right?
after September 5th, I know we were, one of the thoughts was there is the welcome back event on the 13th. I know it's unconventional, it's on a Saturday, but a lot of our community members would be there. 23rd, okay, maybe it wasn't as early as I thought, so. I mean, I could again, look at my schedule and try to arrange something. I know there were only a couple of dates in there, so I'll throw out some dates that work once school starts.
Why don't we form a subcommittee to have an offline about this, with
Okay.
3 members to have an offline about this with John? Wouldn't that be, we could have some, as a committee of 3, we could have some dialogue about this, so when we come back to the table, whether it be at the next board meeting or the next study session, we've expressed to him some overwhelming concerns of our community, some thoughts that we have, run some ideas by him, and have a conversation with him about it, so that we're better prepared at the next meeting to address this in a more coherent way.
Yeah,
Trustee
so-
Kumar and I are already on the search committee. I guess if another person would like to join us in conversation.
How frequently are you in discussions with him now that we're at this phase of the?
I am in discussion with him all the time, especially after the last couple meetings.
Okay.
I'd recommend the subcommittee would be John, Megan, and Tarek.
Well, we already have a superintendent search committee. If another person would like to join the superintendent search committee, we welcome that as an option.
Megan, why don't you join the
I'm
superintendent?
happy to join. But I think that we should have some offline conversations, present these, talk through scenarios, let him know what the preference of the board is, what the discussions were, and come up with a coherent game plan moving forward that is respectful to the candidates who have applied, and more than anything, mindful of doing what's best for our community.
Well, I think right now, the original question, because we have not agreed to change the process. So I think the original conversation is the drafting of the motion to decide whether or not we as a board would like to change the process moving forward. We can engage him into providing us with some additional information, definitely. But if folks are not in support overwhelmingly to either receive additional resumes or change the current motion that's on the table, we need to make sure we're also respecting the vote that was actually passed before.
We'll have better dialogue at our next study session.
Yes.
Okay.
And then perhaps maybe I can, Rebecca and I can see if John is able to even attend the study session.
Even if not, he could help provide us with information. We could have some bullet points in a memorandum that would put some
So we
better
do-
framework around this.
So we do have a motion and a second, even though it's the original motion. Are we going
Yeah.
to vote on the motion?
Well, we're in discussion still.
Okay,
Unless we are still in discussion,
okay.
so. All right. So just want to make sure that we recap. So Trustee Kumar, Megan, and myself will follow back up with you all at our next study session. All right, no other discussion? All right, there is a motion on the table, which I don't know what the motion even reads, but,
I have it written down as motion to open the superintendent search to include more resumes.
all right. So there's a motion, and Megan, are you still second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been properly moved and seconded in the revision. Any all votes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All, that's 3? Megan?
Should we
All
do a roll
those-
call vote?
Sure, I will totally do that for you. Trustee Fala,
Aye.
Trustee Hill,
Aye.
Trustee VanGemert,
No.
Trustee Southward, I'm a no. Trustee Kumar,
No.
Trustee Colin,
Yay.
Trustee Noble.
No.
So it's 4-3. Motion fails. Or 3-4, my ballot. All right. So, no motion, but we'll come back with a draft for you all to discuss at the next meeting. Any other discussion before we move forward? All right, great discussion, everybody. Make sure before I say the magic words that we're good, because last time we weren't. We're good? All right. All right, move for adjournment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.